And so just finding that comfortable seat and allowing your spine to integrate into that space you've created for yourself. Continuing to breathe in a way that supports the shape you've created. And with that space, continuing to connect more and more deeply. Through the breath into the base of your shape, and from that base, from that foundation up through the alignment of your spine. We'll give ourselves 90 more seconds to really integrate into the practice, into your breath, and into the physicality. In this little village, there are three children who grew up together. Each of them interpreting the experiences of their life through their own unique filter. Last 15 seconds here, kind of settling in, fully integrating into the shape as best as possible. And when it feels appropriate for you, letting the eyes open and receive light if they are closed. And let's put ourselves in a shape where we can access one of the feet. Does not matter which one you want to start with, but it should at least be on camera. So let me back up a little bit. And so we're just going to grab a hold of the foot, four fingers of both hands on the top side and the thumbs on the bottom side, kind of at the base of that toe mound. So we're going to look at the distal head of that fascial tissue, or distal tissue at least. And we're just going to press in with the thumbs. The four fingers really have the ability to help you articulate the foot here. So you can think about kind of going through contraction and extension manually with the thumbs and the forefingers, or you can just work right in to that tissue. We probably can't spend too much time on the feet, right? So if I were to say, we don't pay enough attention to our feet, it's true, but it's not that profound. We spend an awful lot of time moving with our feet. They allow us to transverse the planet. And so any moment we can give them a little bit of love is worth it. Give yourself maybe 20 more seconds just to get out any last bits of benefit here on this first side. Remember all the directions that your foot can move. And then when it feels appropriate, let's switch intention. And so we'll head over to that second foot. And here again, starting just kind of with the thumbs, pressing into that plantar fascial tissue. And you have all these attachment sites kind of joining here. So it's a nice spot to just play with soft tissue. But then you have the forefingers on the opposite side of the foot, and those can really help manipulate the structure of the foot. And so with that in mind, let's manipulate the structure of the foot. Remember all of the directions that we can move, those extension articulations, those flexion articulations, both transverse and traditional. Nice thing about having so many joints is we do get that true three-dimensional movement capacity. And you can really peel that soft tissue open with the bone structure if you want to, right? And let's give ourselves just 20 more seconds just to work out any last bits here. And eventually there'll come a time when the feet feel relatively balanced. Let's extend our legs straight out in front of us for a little staff. As you get into this space, right, we haven't touched the posterior chain. The only thing we've addressed is the feet. I want you to try to use that space we've opened in the feet, working your way up the body and find room in a vertical spine. You can splay the toes out, you can relax the feet, but try to find the extra space we've created in that posterior chain and get it to manifest up in a more traditional placement of the torso. Sweep our arms up and overhead, turn the palms towards the front of your space, and just find your way into a little traditional seated forward fold. As you land here, right, it's very easy to let the hands, easy is the wrong word. It can be common to let the hands fall on top of the toes. And if the hands fall on top of the toes and we retract those toes into extension, then we're pulling on that posterior chain that we've already impacted. Right? So we don't really think of the bottoms of the feet as part of the posterior chain, or we infrequently do. But they certainly are. Where you put your toes in a forward fold has an impact on the entire system. So as you start to settle back into your breath and you become more conscientious of the shape you're creating, see if you can connect to that space, that softness you've opened up in the feet. And let that do some work for you here. Let's give ourselves 90 more seconds. So a good long opportunity to connect with this forward fold. I really like when we bring the lungs in close proximity with something else, because I think it gives you an opportunity to get feedback in a way that you may not normally get if your torso is in a more traditional facing alignment. And so as you're settling here, and you use the proximity of your lungs to your thighs as a way to receive more feedback about the physical state of your body, the positioning of the shape you've worked into, where you have the opportunity to expand. Last 20 seconds here. And let's slowly bring ourselves back towards staff. Realigning the physicality of the spinal column, trying to find your way back into the integration, right? So we've spent all this time in this flexion shape. Can we get back into a neutral extension? And from that neutral extension, can you think about how the glutes and the sacrum are balancing there? Maintain that same level of stability at the sacrum, and let's take our left knee into a bend position. Very easy as we bend the left knee for the weight to rock back and for us to get off kilter. So think about keeping the spine vertical, which is not always where our addressing is of this space. So spine is vertical. It happens to put more compression on that anterior hip crease. And that's kind of what we're looking for here. We want vertical spine, nice neutral alignment. Left hand comes behind us. Right elbow is gonna come on that left thigh. And we're finding our way into the twist. Because we're vertical, there's less kind of necessity of that left hand to be the kickstand that keeps you upright. So think about how you can use that left hand, not as like the structure of the shape, but instead as the encouragement for more depth towards the ceiling, so that we can lighten the gravitational force load on the vertebrae themselves. And as you lighten that force load of pressure, downward force, can you use that additional lightness to rotate more deeply through each exhale cycle? really try to focus on the softness of the connectivity between each vertebrae. Note the rate of respiration. Has it shifted just because we've put in a rotation? Again, we have a nice proximity of lungs to thighs here. Good feedback opportunity. Or lungs to thigh. And when it feels appropriate, let's unwind. We'll bring the bottoms of the feet together and just take ourselves into a little butterfly fold. You have some asymmetry at the femoral heads from that compression we've done on the left side. And to note how the glutes are sitting against the mat, and think about abdominal adjustments to bring yourself back into a neutral balance. And so as each of these 3 young children grow up in this village, and they all have their own experiences, although some of them are overlaid with one another, they're all coming from their own perspective. They really develop their own worldviews. And those worldviews begin to shape their realities the way worldviews tend to do. They also are growing up in a very tumultuous time. And so as they come of age, these 3 young adults are chosen for this very important task. When it feels appropriate, we'll bring ourselves back to a vertical spine, extend the legs into staff. Think about rebalancing at the sacrum, finding your lateral balance, and then bringing that balance right down the medial line so that we are sitting on a stable platform that is our sacrum and our glutes. And then we'll do the same thing to the second side. The right knee is going to bend. We're not going to allow ourselves to tilt forward or rock back. We're going to stay in that neutral flat spinal alignment. Right hand's going to come behind us, left elbow to the right thigh. As you rotate, there can be a tendency to really rock back into that right hand. Don't allow that to be the structure. Think about kind of this wrapping around trunk space as keeping the proximity between the thigh and the torso. And then the right hand is just lightening that force load pressure on the spinal column so that we can drive the crown of the head towards the ceiling or sky. And from that softness between the vertebrae, we find additional rotational capacity. When you feel balanced left to right with no rush to make that true, we're going to bring our torso back to neutral. Let both legs extend out in front of us again for staff, and we're headed into another seated forward fold. Traditional. Remember that you can bend the knees. There is nothing preventing you From doing so, remember that we have freed up space on the bottom of the feet. And maybe you want to use that by not pulling the toes into extension, but maybe you like having that toe pull into extension to help bring tautness across the posterior chain. Completely and totally up to you. Think about settling your rate of respiration so that it continues to assist the depth of your shape here. And so these three young adults are sent out on this adventure. They are to climb the tallest peak in the land. And on that peak, they are told something profound will await them. Not a lot to go on, but each of them, for their own reasons, agrees. Last 30 seconds here. When it feels appropriate, let's bring ourselves back up into staff. We'll grab our props here. So we're going to go blankets, towels from shelf fold to hot dog fold. So we end up here. We'll do the same thing. Yeah, let's do the same thing with the second. So we end up 2 hot dog folds, one running kind of across the mat at the top and one running with the spinal direction. That top blanket may want to adjust and move depending on your own torso geometry. We're going to head down. We want the sacrum to stay anchored. So you can think about from staff, anchored, little low back bend. The higher of the 2 blankets is there to support your head. So you can adjust that, you can roll that. But once you get relaxed into the shape, get the palms to roll up and then add like 10% additional awareness on the thumb side of your hands. So we induce some additional external rotation, the shoulder heads. And then we're just going to breathe. So as these 3 young adventurers head out, they take with them their world perspectives. The first of the 3 incredibly detailed, incredibly prepared, and incredibly protective of his rations. his gear, of his time. The second of the three is much more forthcoming with information, with rations, with gear, but only to any residents that they interact with along the way of their city. That becomes quite advantageous. He's able to trade resources he's low on for resources he has surpluses of. And the third traveler is quite different. She has been freely handing out her resources to those in more need along the way. She's been stopping and helping strangers, interacting with more or less everyone they come across. The next time that you exhale, engage the core through the exhale, and then push the sacrum away from you, almost like you're scooting the backside of the body down while the core is locked in, and see if you can get just a little additional low back length. And then relax. Essentially, you're taking any of the lumbar arch and you're transitioning that into neutral length, or you're attempting to. Let's give ourselves just about 90 more seconds to try to settle into this new spinal length. Think about utilizing your next exhale to really land and completely release into the shape. Note how that lumbar section is responding to both the prop and your desire for neutral length. And then when it feels appropriate for you, let's inhale and bend the knees so that the kneecaps point towards the ceiling if they don't already. We'll let the knees fall to one side or the other, whatever side feels most appropriate. And then we're just going to take both props out from underneath us. And so now we go to a truly neutral alignment. The two areas that we can still have some bunching, right? Cervical spine, easy to go into that little extension. coming off of our prop space, and then lumbar. And maybe we can still find a way to tilt the pelvic bowl so that we get even more neutral without engaging the core. And then I really want you to think about maintaining this connection and neutrality of the spine. So scan the entirety of your body's connection with the mat right now. Feel all those points and feel the density of connection at each of those points. And so our goal is to maintain those same connection points and that same level of intensity as we take our left ankle across our right thigh. So a little figure 4. For a lot of us, this particular shape normally doesn't have much of an impact, right? It's just, I can cross that leg. That's a relatively accessible shape for many of us. For some of us, this feels like a remarkable challenge. The goal here is that we maintain all of this connection density, and without really shifting and adjusting, we can get some nice impact on that external rotation of the left hip. Now you can put lateral pressure into that left thigh to help encourage additional external rotation. One of the challenges is there's that bilateral compensation, and oftentimes you put enough pressure on that lateral edge, the right oblique, and maybe even tissue wrapping into that quadriceps lumborum on the right side starts to tighten. That's not what we're looking for, right? Then we've changed the density and the engagement points. Really think about, can I maintain my neutral density, my neutral connection to the mat, and still get an impactful external rotation of the femoral head? Maybe double check the cervical spine extension. It's theoretically possible you went into flexion too and the chin tucked, right? But I think it's because of the propping that we're coming out of, it's much more likely that you're getting that arch in the cervical spine. And so think about what you can do to stay neutral through the upper reaches of the spine as well. And we'll give ourselves just about 30 more seconds here. When it feels appropriate, we're going to maintain the leg positioning of the left side, and we're just going to transition that straight to the ground. So we stay in this external rotation, so we're in a half butterfly. As you land here, pretty easy to feel the sacral imbalance, right? It's hard to stay with the same level of balance with this much asymmetry in the hips. That's fine. Transition your awareness to the anchoring of the shoulders and think about stabilizing that shoulder girdle. Then we'll allow the right knee to join the left. Now, this is a different way to get into twist, right? Pretty atypical way to get into twist, where we set up one side and then the other side comes and joins. You may find this to be much more difficult than you're expecting. The top leg has lots of places it can be, right? So if you retract the right leg back more towards the right side and have an offset leg positioning, that's an easier place on the hips. The further that right knee goes forward, even into asymmetry of that forward shape, the harder this transition is on the hips And the more you really need to focus on the shoulder girdle, maintaining those connection points. So that being said, the right position for you, right? No right, no wrong. Just what feels most beneficial for you this morning. And so oftentimes, when the three of them would stop in a town, they would have very different experiences with the town folk. Little kids might come up and beg for food. And the first of the three would 100% of the time say no. And the second might engage in the conversation and ask if they have any tie to the city that they came from. And if they do, he might share a piece of food. And the third would freely give food when asked. And oftentimes that meant that her resources were depleting, but somehow, some way, she always seemed to get by. Whether it was generosity of others, or food foraged along the way, or going hungry. She always made it. Last 30 seconds here. About how that right shoulder, kind of that whole right half of the shoulder girdle is feeling as it is the anchor of this shape. And then when it feels appropriate, let's bring our knees back to neutral. And as you re-find neutral, a new neutral, reconnect to the positions of mat to body connection. Feel into the density or the intensity of each of those points and remap that in your mind so that we can head to side two. And once you feel like you have that mapped, you can bring your right ankle across your left thigh. Again, the goal here is to have as little, theoretically none, right? But as little change in the mapping of the connection points as possible. And to still create an impactful external rotation of your right femoral head, right hip. Utilizing each cycle of respiration to land more fully in the shape, and constantly calculating those connection points and how you can distribute your weight in a way that mirrors your neutral alignment. At one point, someone observes the three travelers and how different they are and asks them, why they react so differently when asked the same question. The first says, I never share my resources because I've been given a mission. And as long as I'm able to complete this mission, I know that the mission will be a success. The second traveler, when asked the same question, responds by saying, all three of us are from the same city. Our city is the pinnacle of society, and it is the most important culture. And as long as our city is this shining bastion of humanity, this mission will succeed. Feeling into each cycle of respiration as you continue to map those connection points in your body. Thinking about the neutrality of the cervical spine, the lumbar spine, the length of the entirety of the spinal column. Last 30 seconds here on the second side. And when it feels appropriate for you, we're going to keep the leg angle of the right side, drop that straight down to the ground, land there. Think about the hip girdle and how you can create as much neutrality as possible. But really pay attention to the shoulder girdle as that becomes the anchor. We want that to be a smooth, even distribution of weight. And then when you feel appropriate in the shoulder girdle, we'll let the left leg join the right in the twist. We find our way to the anchor. We breathe our way into that rotation. Remember how impactful that top leg positioning can be. We'll give ourselves just about 20 more seconds here on this second half of the second side. Bring the knees back to neutral. Thinking about that full neutral integration. Right? Any asymmetry that's arisen from the rotation comes back into a neutral alignment. Set that medial line in a way that you are very comfortable and confident in. And then make a determination whether you want to use a blanket or not, or two blankets or not. We're going to bring the bottoms of the feet together and let the knees fall out wide. So you can take both blankets and just take them from their hot dog shapes, chuck them underneath the lateral edges. You could also elongate one blanket and wrap it over the top of the ankles and tuck that underneath, or you can go no blankets at all, right? Whatever allows you to be the most released, relaxed, and free within your breath. And so when the third of the three travelers responds, this is, I share freely because everything is connected. And that kind of gets a little chuckle out of everybody within the group. But she means it. Some time later, after many obstacles, many cold nights, many hot days, the three of them start their ascent to this mountain. We'll give ourselves just another 20 seconds here. Feeling your body in balance. And when it's appropriate, we'll bring our knees back to neutral. And as you land back in this neutral alignment, can you ask yourself if there's anything that your body would benefit from prior to Shavasana? And if there is, can you offer that to yourself now? Anything to impact your version of Shavasana? And if you have everything you need, when you've given yourself everything you need, let's transition into a shape where we can appreciate some stillness. The three of them eventually reach the peak of this mountain, the place they've been charged with visiting. And as their ascension stops, this booming voice echoes down and asks each of them one question. What matters most? When you find your stillness, settle into your version of Shavasana. in the same way that each of them heard this question at one time. We responded in unison. The first saying, I do. And instantaneously, his world was shrunk to the confines of his own skin. The second saying, my city. And instantaneously, his world was shrunk to the confines of his city. And the third saying, everything. And she found a world without limitations. We'll start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes. Movement into our wrists and our ankles. Our elbows, knees, shoulders, hips, spine, neck, jaw, eyes, tongue. Eventually, the entirety of the body will move, and we'll utilize that movement to transition from the shapes we're in. We'll find our way back into a seat. In the seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes closed. And with our next inhale, we'll bring our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that by expanding our perspective, we may be able to experience that what is right for self may not be what's right for the world and beyond. See how that changes your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Sunday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here. Have one heck of a beautiful day. I'll be back tomorrow night if you want to move. Love you. Bye.